Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining me here through Be Well. My name is Courtney and I'm here to offer about a 45-minute yin practice. We will work the spine in all directions, get into the hips, so it should be a really full body exploration today. And so I invite you now to find an easeful seat, whatever that might look like for you. I'm seated up on a folded blanket. You might be sitting on a cushion. If you have chip foam blocks at home, that's something, or just a pillow off your couch would work as well. If you prefer to just sit right on the floor, then that's just fine. But however you are, like for you to take a moment. If it feels safe to do so, close the eyes. If closing the eyes doesn't feel safe, maybe just downcasting the gaze or just softening your focus. And start to find length through the spine as the shoulders stack over the hips, ears over the shoulders. And just notice how you're arriving, how you're landing on your mat, in your body, in this practice. And just start to scan. Notice how and where the body's connecting to the mat beneath you. Scan either from the tips of your toes to the crown of the head, or from the crown of the head to the tips of the toes, just checking in with your body in this moment. Try to soften the space between the brows. Let your jaw soften and relax. And now start to notice whatever else you may have brought to the mat with you today, mentally, emotionally, energetically. And we're not here to spiral into an internal dialogue of why you may be feeling the way you do in this moment. We're here to notice, to observe. And in this observance, we're allowing whatever is to be with the knowledge that nothing is set in stone, everything changes, and there's a fluidity. So how you're feeling right now will very likely be different by the end of your practice today. Start to notice the breath. Again, this is an observance. We're not controlling the breath. We're simply watching it come into and out of the body, observing the quality, its path, its rhythm. I was flipping through old notes in my yoga kind of journal today, planning this class, and I came across a word, and I don't know the exact First Nations language it is, but it's, I was taught this word by Sequoia Trueblood, who is this incredible elder that I had the pleasure of doing a yoga retreat that was guided by a friend of mine. And he spent a lot of time with us and did a sweat lodge and took us on hikes. And he's from Oklahoma originally. And he said this word, ometakweasin, okay? Ometakweasin, and it means that we're all related, we're all relatives. And coming from my Hatha lineage of yoga, we talk about how we're all connected, right? We are all connected beyond ourselves and within ourselves. And this idea of ometakweasin, that we're all related, I think is a really important thing to connect to, that we're all connected on this earth, right? And we can go a little bit more refined with that, which we will a little deeper into our practice. Like for you to start to bring your attention to the breath once again. On your next inhalation, feel the belly expand, then the ribs, then the chest. Exhale, let the belly soften, the ribs draw inwards, and the chest to fall back to the heart. Inhale, fill the belly, then the ribs, then the chest. Exhale, belly draws in, ribs draw closer together, chest rests back to the heart. A few more rounds of this 3-part breath, inhaling belly, ribs, chest, exhaling belly, ribs, chest. Let's do one more, even I think I said one more already, but let's do one more fully. Going at your own pace. Beautiful. And take a nice full breath in. Sigh it out. Cool. From here, if your eyes are closed, you can gently start to blink them open. If they were lowered, you can start to lift the gaze. Lean back into your hands. Free your legs if you were sitting with cross-legged. Give them a shake, give them a jiggle, flop the feet. Maybe you'd even like to draw circles with your ankles in one direction and the other direction. That just helps to bring a little bit of movement into the hips and pelvis. We're gonna start with toe stretch. So you're gonna come onto your knees. If you need a little extra support here, if you're on a yoga mat, you can always grab it, the middle, pull it back towards you and create as many rolls and folds in the fabric as you need to place your knees upon, okay? That's one option. If you have a blanket nearby, you may choose to fold or roll the blanket underneath the knees as well, okay? We'll start in tabletop and you're gonna tuck your toes, okay? So coming from this angle, you're gonna tuck your toes underneath and you're going to make sure that that pinky toe isn't in a state of plantar flexion, okay? Meaning that it's pointing back behind you. So make sure all 10 toes, the soles of the toes are connected to the floor, okay? So from there, this might be where you stay. That might be enough action going on the bottoms of the feet for you. And if it ever becomes too intense, even from this space, of course, untuck the toes. You might want to tap the feet and you can go back in, okay? Otherwise, if it feels safe to do so, start to walk your hands back towards your body. Now you might pause a little bit closer. You might be able to sit right on your heels. You might need to place a pillow or a folded blanket between your butt and your heels. Okay, so from here, just gonna start my timer. Start to notice your breath, okay? Feel the breath entering and exiting the body. As long as you're not stuffed up, I do encourage you to breathe in and out through the nose in long, smooth, soft rhythms, okay? Breathing here, we don't tend to open the undersides of our feet very often. We usually have our feet encased in shoes, even on sandals that might be quite stiff in the sole. So unless you're reaching up to the top shelf and you're covered, we tend to not find this sort of mobility or movement. So it can feel fairly intense. Know and give yourself permission that you can walk your hands forward to relieve some of that tension you may be feeling. And you can come right back into tabletop if you need to. Keep the jaw relaxed here. The tongue has a tendency to want to press up to the roof of the mouth. And if you're finding that, even slacken the jaw so that space happens between the top and bottom jaw. Now our yin practice is guided by 3 tattvas. There are our kind of rules or our guidelines. And the first tattva is that we play our edge, okay? So our edge is where we feel something. And once we find that edge, and it's kind of Goldilocks, it's not too little, it's not too much, right? It's just enough, right? That you're like, this is borderline uncomfortable, that's okay. The second tattva is that once we find our edge, we find stillness. And then within that stillness is our third tattva. We hold for time. Now this stillness guideline, right, has exceptions. One, if you maybe went to the Papa Bear, you went a little too far, right? Then you can readjust your body, your props to kind of find the right edge again. Or if your edge recedes, you're no longer feeling that stress or that tension, then you are most welcome to adjust the body to go a little deeper. Breathing here. Let's take a nice full breath in. Sigh it out. 2 more. And a moment, oh, badoo. Thought I had that shut off for sound. You're gonna remove props from underneath you, shift your weight forward, untuck the toes, tap the tops of the feet onto the floor. This usually feels very nice. Okay, now from here you're going to sit back onto your heels if that feels accessible for you, just for a moment, and we can stretch out the tops of the feet a little bit. So we'll just take a couple of breaths here. If that doesn't feel safe or is not accessible for the knees, a standing kneel is just fine, okay? Lovely. So from here, we're going to come into saddle pose. So you're, depending on your anatomy, you may need to have extra props. I definitely do for this pose. So if you have blocks at home, wonderful. Otherwise, pillows, blankets rolled up to create kind of a more firm surface will work. I find if you fold like a bed pillow in half, either the short ends to meet or the long ends to meet can work really, really well. If you have blocks, you might just need one, having enough space between your heels to have your butt kind of nestled down in between. For some of you, you may need to have quite a few props to just lessen the amount of flexion in the knees. If you need a little more space for the knees and you have a couple of hand towels, you can always pause this, go grab 2 hand towels, roll them up, and just stick them right tight against the knee crease, and that will often relieve some of the intensity of the compression in the deep flexion. Also, if you have a bolster, you can use the bolster between the legs. Okay, so coming to wherever feels okay for you. Tops of the feet should be on the floor, okay? If this really does not serve your body, you're welcome to lay on your tummy, make a forearm pillow or a hand pillow, rest your forehead, and just bend your knees, drawing the heels up towards the ceiling, okay? Otherwise, coming into your saddle pose, find your breath, okay? Now, if you're able to nestle your sit bones right down to the floor between the heels, wonderful, okay? Now, you might stay just here as you are with the shoulders stacked over the hips. You might choose to walk your hands back behind you. If you go for this option, I always like to pick my butt up, lengthen my sit bones more towards the front of my mat and place the butt back down. And that just allows for greater intensity for sensation into the quads and opening through the fronts of the hips. Now, some of you might be quite open or able to lower down onto your elbows and forearms, and some of you might be able to lay all the way back down. So just honoring your body. If you're those mobile few that can lay right onto your back, you might choose to either hold your feet or clasp your elbows above your head. Notice the breath. See if you can connect to those longer, smoother, softer inhalations and exhalations. If it serves you, you can again close the eyes. You can have the gaze downward. Keep the tongue soft in the mouth. If you find you're having a hard time keeping the jaw relaxed, gently place the tip of your tongue to the hard ridged palate just behind the top front teeth, and that automatically helps disengage the jaw. I would like for you to take 3 full breaths here, if that's of service. Of course, if your body's asking you to come out, please do. If you're fully reclined, on the bottom of your third exhalation, activate through your center. Start to press up onto one hand and the other. And then if you're where I am, we'll all kind of slowly start to come out together as you inhale, stacking the shoulders back over the hips. From here, I always like to shift the weight forward to remove the props and to just take the pressure out of the knees. If you are on your tummy, you took the prone variation, then you're welcome to press back to child's pose, or you can come up to tabletop. And just give yourself a moment to move the body in any way that feels good to you. What does your body need to release that saddle? Okay. From here, once you've found the release that you were looking for, you're going to come back to seated. I definitely do recommend sitting upon something. It doesn't have to be super high. If you are quite tight through the low back and the hips, or you maybe live with sciatica, then definitely having your hips elevated for coming into butterfly. So this is a nice long-legged butterfly. The soles of the feet connect, the knees open towards the sides of the mat. Okay, and this is a long-legged butterfly, so you want to have a nice diamond shape in between your legs. I know in a lot of yang style practices, in your Baddha Konasana, you will have your heels right in close, but we're looking to have a long-legged butterfly. Now we really need to support the body so that we can target those yin-like tissues. And so I like to support my knees with blocks or with pillows, rolls of toilet paper. You get the gist, right? Just get creative with what you have at home. So putting something underneath the knees allows my skeletal structure to be supported so that the more meaty superficial muscles of the body can disengage. Okay, from here, if again forward flexion is an issue, or you have sciatica or are in the midst of sciatica flare-up, then I encourage you to either keep your shoulders stacked over the hips, or if you do want to hinge forward, you're going to keep the spine nice and straight, keeping the sternum drawing forward and your chin lifted. Okay. Otherwise, you can start to round forward, allowing the head to hang heavy. Now, I like to support myself here so that my head isn't just hanging in limbo. So having another pillow or something that you can rest your head upon, you can stack your fists, breathing here. Really staying connected to those long, smooth, and soft breaths as you hold these poses. If you find that you are having a hard time keeping the breath flowing with ease, that is a good sign that you've gone a little bit too far into the pose. So just really using your breath as a guideline to where your body's responding with the most amount of ease. Thinking of Omitakweasan and that meaning that we're all related, we're all interconnected. When I bring that to a more micro level, so think of that as like a macro lens. When I bring it in a bit, we can think of our body as being totally intertwined, right? This symbiotic organism, which we are, where everything is interconnected. We're this intricate weave of a web. And our breath helps to bring oxygen into the body to nourish the web in some degrees. Of course, nourishment, exercise, those also relate. But taking this time to target our yin tissues, we need to support the skeletal structure, which is a little more inward in the body, right? So we got to go in, support that depth so that we can then target tissues that are a little bit more superficial, a little closer to the surface than the bone. Take a nice full breath in. Sigh it out. Full breath in. Sigh it out. One more. Now very slowly, slower than you think you should, you're going to start to press your body away from the floor. You might feel kind of creaky, like an ungreased hinge, and that's okay. Moans and groans are always welcome coming out of yin postures. It usually helps with the release. If you have props on your lap, you can remove them. Any props out from the sides. I always like to just guide my knees up a little bit here. Now, from here, lean back into your hands, take the feet wide, and move through a couple of knee drops from side to side. Just allowing a little flush and flow here. So helping the body energetically remove any blockages, helping to bring greater oxygenation to the areas that were compressed. Maybe you'd like to straighten your legs, give them a little shake, a little jiggle. Cool. From here, I would like for you to come off whatever you might be sitting on. You might come back to it. You're going to move a little bit towards the front of your mat. Bend the left knee, drawing it in towards the groin. Lean onto the left hip and swing your right leg back behind you. Okay? Coming into swan pose. So first we're going to start with a proud swan, and there's a few variations you can do in this pose. If you're quite mobile through the hips, your shin might be quite parallel to the short edge of the mat. I don't bend that way, so I have my heel quite in close to my body. Some people prefer to have the heel right underneath the glute. Okay? So if you're keeping this kind of form, the way I'm generally looking here, figure out where you'd like to have the shin placed. If that's a little too intense for you in any way, you're welcome to find seated swan. The right foot will plant, the left foot will pick up. There's dorsal flexion in the ankle. You'll cross it above the right knee and place your butt back down. Okay? That will still get into the outer hip. You can also lay on your back and thread the needle with the left leg on top. Breathing here. The proud swan allows us to target the spine through extension, as well as that right hip. If you are quite mobile here through the low spine, your hands might be able to come right back beside the body, or you might have to have your hands further ahead. Maybe even wedging something under that left hip. From here, walk your hands forward a little bit, shimmy your hips back, and then walk your hands a little further forward, shimmy the hips back, and you're gonna keep doing that little walk forward, shimmy back until you come into the sleeping swan that works for you. You might choose to stay on your elbows and forearms. Some of you might be able to flop right down. If you have pillows or a bolster, it might feel good to bring the bolster underneath the torso. Reconnecting to your breath. If you find yourself drifting in thought, breaking the cycle with that noticing, and then coming back to your body, to your breath. Take a nice full breath in. Go ahead and sigh it out. Full breath in. Sigh it out. One more, just like that. If you laid right down onto your torso, then you're going to bring your hands back beneath you. Start to press the body more up. If you had props underneath you, moving them off to the side. Okay. Now from here, if you're in the swan variation that looks like what I'm in, you're going to draw the left hip to the floor and you're going to bring that right leg forward. And you're going to make your way into shoelace or half shoelace. If you were reclined, just coming up to seated, and if you were in seated swan, you can release the legs so that we can move into this together. Now, some of you might be able to go ahead and cross that right leg right over the left, bringing the right heel by the left hip, okay? Some of you, that might not be an option, and you may choose to straighten that left leg. I always like to sit on something here, just to give my hips a little bit of a rise, okay? Now, for some of you, you might even be more of a figure four shape, in which case I'd suggest maybe putting a block underneath or prop underneath that right knee, okay? So any number of poses or variations of this pose you can be in. You can even put blocks under your knees here. Lovely. So just take a moment, allow your sit bones to snug into the mat or to the props beneath you. Feel the length of your spine. Try to soften into the hip creases here. Try to release as much superficial or muscular tension as is available for you to do, right? So see what you can soften. From here, bring the right hand to the mat, okay? If you have a block and you prefer to have the block underneath the hand, that's just fine too, and you can choose which height setting will work for you. Then you're going to check in with the left shoulder. If you have any issues where you get numbness or tingling in your hands when you elevate the arm above shoulder height, go ahead and have that left arm down by your side, okay? And if you have no issues, your tickety-boo here, you can reach the left arm up in line with the ear. From here, we're gonna reach up and over to the right. Now, this is a yin practice, so you wanna use as little energy as possible in the poses. So I like to let my top arm bend and relax, maybe even rest on the head. Just allowing the jaw to relax, and your head is facing, or your gaze is facing wherever feels happy in your neck. So it might be down, it might be more forward, it might be up towards the ceiling. So that idea that we're totally connected, so moving into that micro lens, you think if you have issues with your hip, your knee and your ankle are directly affected, and vice versa. If you have issues in your feet or your ankles, your knees and your hips are also affected. And so taking time to really work through your whole body and in different practices can be really, really important to creating harmony in our bodies, in that interconnected web, how every tissue is related and connected to the other tissues of your body. Take an inhale here and sigh it out. Start to root down through the right hand and arm to press yourself back up, releasing the left arm. From here, bring your left hand to the right shin, knee, or thigh, and bring your right hand to the mat behind you. Now this is yin, so we're not going super deep into this twist here. We're just meeting ourselves there, right to that place where you'd have to exert effort to go any further. Take a nice big full breath in and sigh it out. Inhale to bring your gaze forward. Exhale to bring your heart forward. From here, lean back into your hands, release the top leg, release the bottom leg. Make any movements that feel good to you. Again, you might shake, jiggle the legs and flop the feet. You might want to bend the knees and bring the feet to the floor, work through a couple of knee drops here. Okay, and then from here we're going to move into the swan shoelace duo on the other side. So you may want to have your block handy or your bolster and a blanket. So you're going to rock onto, bend the right knee, bringing the right heel towards the groin. Rock onto the right hip and leg and swing that left leg back behind you, okay? Remembering that if that variation does not serve your body today, or just maybe this side of the body, you can find your seated swan with that right ankle and foot dorsiflex placed just above the left knee. Or you can recline onto your back, keeping that figure four position and thread the needle, okay? So options there. If you've come into the proud swan with your shin on the floor, again, just figuring out, does it work to be more parallel with the short edge of the mat, or having the heel under the body, or somewhere in between? Again, I like to wedge something underneath my sit bone or my hip on the front leg side. And in your proud swan, the hands are as close to or as far away from the torso as serves your body. Noticing your long, smooth, soft breaths. Now you're most welcome to stay in your proud swan if it's feeling really good for you. Otherwise, you're going to walk your hands forward, shimmy your hips back, walk the hands a little further forward, shimmy the hips back. Keep working that little dance until you come into your sleeping swan. Again, you might be just on your forearms and elbows on the floor. You might be able to come right down onto your tummy. I prefer to keep something underneath my body. It helps me feel a little more supported here. Brings the ground a little closer to me. Allow the jaw to slacken. Know that nothing's set in stone, so you can always readjust the body if you've gone too far or your edge has receded. All the while remembering that stillness in these holds is how we target those yin-like tissues. When we think of Ometakwe on that micro lens in regards to our body, it might make us rethink what we're using to nourish our bodies. It might make you think what you're putting on your feet. You might second guess those stiletto heels or those pointy toe business shoes. Because we know that what we're putting on our feet is going to have a profound effect, negative or positive, with how we're able to move our bodies. Everything happens from the ground up. Take a nice full breath in. Sigh it out. And then very slowly, start to press the body away from the floor. If you have props underneath you, just sliding them off to the side. From here, you're going to rock back onto that right hip. Swing the left leg around. Okay? Now from here, figuring out where you'd like to go next. So your left leg may come all the way across. Okay? But maybe you have the right leg straight, left leg bent. Maybe you're more in a figure four with the support underneath that left knee. Again, I like to sit up on something. And just because you set up one way on one side doesn't mean your body's going to have that allowance on the other side. So honoring that, right? Just being in the place that works for this side. And then move into some stillness here. Just notice how it feels to have the shoulders stacked over the hips. Try to soften into the hip creases here. And reconnect to that long, smooth, soft breath. From here, you can bring your block or any props to the left side if you like. Know that you can always just have a hand on the ground and that works just fine. Checking in with the right shoulder, noting if you know that you're prone to that numbness or tingling when you extend the right arm over shoulder height, that you will keep your right arm down by your side, okay? Otherwise, right arm will come up in line with the ear. Take an inhale, and as you exhale, you're gonna reach up and over to the left. Again, I always like to let that right arm relax, gently resting on my head, not applying a ton of pressure onto the head, but just allowing it to rest there. Really feel your breath here. Maybe try to direct the breath to the outside of the right, on the right side of the torso. Breathe. Check in with your neck. Your gaze is wherever lets your neck be happiest, so it could be down to the ground, out in front of you, or up towards the ceiling. The bottom jaw is slack. Take a nice big full breath in and sigh it out. Start to press the left hand or arm down to bring the body up, releasing that right arm. The right hand will now find the left shin, knee, or thigh, wherever feels right, and the left hand comes back behind you, coming into that gentle twist. And take a nice big full breath in. Sigh it out. Inhale, bring your gaze through center. Exhale, heart through center. Unravel the top leg and the bottom leg. Remove anything from underneath you. Have anything nearby now that you will want for your Shavasana, your final resting pose. Okay. I always like to have my bolster to place underneath my knees. We're not quite in Shavasana. We're going to be there very momentarily. So taking your time to ease on down to the floor. Just noticing your breath here. Allow for a scan of the body. From head to toe or toes to head. And then take your feet nice and wide, and we'll do some knee drops from side to side, just releasing those last couple of poses we did as we prepare to come into our final resting pose. Maybe hugging your knees now into the chest. Give yourself a little squeeze or a big hug if it serves you. You might even try to kiss your kneecaps. And then release shoulders, neck, and head to the floor. You can begin to extend your arms and legs to the mat. Now, in doing so, if it does not feel safe to lay on your back, you're welcome to come into a side lying pose, okay? You're welcome to come into child's pose or a comfortable seat, okay? You may also have your knees bent, feet flat on the floor, but for me, I'm going to slide a bolster underneath my knees. Take a nice full breath in. Open the mouth, sigh it out. Your toes and your feet are relaxed. Toes and feet relaxed. Ankles, shins, and calves relaxed. Your knees are relaxed. Quads, hamstrings, glutes, and hips relaxed. Biceps, triceps, elbows relaxed. Forearms, wrists, hands, all of your fingers are completely relaxed. Low back, mid back, upper back relaxed. Pelvis, abdomen, and diaphragm relaxed. Your ribs and your chest are relaxed. Shoulders, neck, and head relaxed. Your mind, your body completely relaxed.